I haven't actually wandered that far on my Photowalk this week. I'd intended to take a bit of a jaunt out, but on my way out of town, so it really literally was only a few miles from my front door, I got stuck in this long sort of slow line of traffic behind a steamroller further ahead, so I didn't get a picture for you, I'm afraid. And I looked up this path that I've been sort of eyeing for a long time, and I thought, right, I'm going to take that path, because usually I just fly past it. And so I walked up this quite long, it's very elevated where I am at the moment. I walked right up to the top of this path, parked the car, walked up to the top of the path, and I found myself there's a strip of land ahead of me. And I thought, hang on, what's this sort of strip of well-mown grass between two fields of barley? I assume they're barley. What's that doing there? What's that all about? It's as sort of wide as not as a highway or motorway, but it's about half the width of a small one of those. And I thought, well, in the middle of nowhere. And then it occurred to me, all those private aircraft that I see taking off from our town, and I thought, well, we don't have an airstrip. Where's an airstrip? This is where they take off. So let me get a picture, and it's a bit like those, those on YouTube. Well, I see them because for some reason I quite enjoy them. Those aircraft YouTubes where you see aircraft coming in to a hillside to land. It's usually a sort of an Asian country, very clever, but the runways are kind of almost like a 45-degree slope. This one's not quite like that, but it is on the side of a hill. So let me get a picture. So I'm at F4, neutral density on because it's such a bright day. Shutter speed 250th, ISO 160. There we go. I'm not sure whether you're really going to identify from my picture because you can't really see where the slope sort of falls off. But just if you see beyond that an industrial area, that's practically where this slope falls off. So if you're taking off downhill, I guess you've got the industrial estate ahead of you thinking, I hope this bird lifts. Or if you're coming in the other way, you just got a row of trees at the end. Anyway, there are some big show changes to announce today. Well, one big show change. Quite an exciting step, I think. So we'll talk about that later on in the show, because I like to tease about it. In the meantime, here we are walking again in the sunshine on a Friday. I have a hat on today. Welcome to
Photography Daily, the Friday Photo Walk.
So here's the thing, there are plenty of photography podcasts and some very good ones. I should know, I listen to them, but there's only one that really features a photo walk made up of a digital mailbag featuring your messages, your ideas, your feedback and your photo projects that you've been working on, aimed to inspire any photographer of any ability. This is a show for those who like to make pictures and who like to generally, but not exclusively, listen whilst they're out on a walk. It's you with your camera, me too, but I'm also bringing along the messages and a microphone. Today on the show, turns out I have a proper twee love of vintage, editing with Affinity. Have you heard of that? A little more Instagram and what it could or should be according to photographers, plus a mail that's forced me to go look for my tin helmet. The most inspiring photo project made within an 800-meter radius, proving that there is a story just waiting to be made into a book. The final first thing that you see feature, for the moment, because as Mike Miller suggested to me, the Golden Arches occasionally bring back the McRib. So why can't we do a similar thing with the first thing that you see? We talk a hint of street and have inspirational words from former guests, YouTuber Sean Tucker from a very, very early episode, way over 200 shows ago. A little more from Johnny Keeley, our Insta guide, Henrik Saxgren on getting frostbite, and Gulnara Samoilova on her street adventures. We're supported by MPB.com, who help you buy, sell and trade used camera gear in the US, the UK and Europe. And here's 2 reasons why you can trust them for your picture making. 1. Peace of mind when you're buying in the form of a guarantee. And 2. Money in your bank quickly when you sell. So if you want to buy, sell or trade used gear and be part of the ever-important circular economy, mpb.com is a great place to do business. Go to the show page today for links to MPB, our partnership of Photo Swindon, and all links to the photographers featured and or their pictures sent in. Oh, and stick around for the show news nearer the end, because there are some changes afoot, as David Bowie once sang. Remember, you can send in your own pictures to be featured on this show and your stories to studio@photographydaily.show, the email address, studio@photographydaily.show. And if you're sending pictures in, 2,000 pixels please on the long side. Right, lens caps off, let's walk and make some pictures together on the Friday Photo Walk.
So here's one to kick us off from Miles Lockett. Neil, I just wanted to say that the Photo Walk has become a bit of a ritual in our podcast world. You share space with another one that you've mentioned recently called 99% Invisible. Oh yes, that's a fantastic podcast. Not photography, but it doesn't have to be photography, does it? There's another one that I mentioned the other night in our patron Zoom that we have once a month called Lore, Lore, which is all about folklore. I've been consuming a bit of that of late, some fantastic stories, including one about folklore in English enchanted forests and woods. And I just happen to be walking through one now. I'm not sure whether it's enchanted, but when you hear stories like that, you start putting two and two together and coming up with the sort of numbers that got me in trouble in maths class. So yeah, and also This American Life, he says, that's a staple too. Mine too. See, we've clearly got very similar tastes, Miles, you and I. But you're our British not so guilty secret, probably because my wife Carolyn likes the way you still talk about a mailbag and letters, and often refer to shooting film. I know we sound like we've gotten you firmly pinned to the Englishman living in his castle narrative. You have rather, haven't you? But that's okay. That's all part of the picture. I'm in the woods now. Shall I do that thing that I heard in Lore? Shall I try and follow a trail, end up walking around in circles, and time travel through to the medieval ages? I don't know, Neil, come on. You're going a bit far-fetched now. If I walk into a man-trap, then I know I've done exactly that. It's quite, actually this part of the woods is quite thick. I reckon I can get back down to the path, famous last words, this way. I'll see. If you hear cackling, that was all part of that story. Do let me know, won't you? Yes, where were we? We haven't seen... Oh yes, I've a question though. We haven't seen your film work. I wonder when you may be including them in the, as you call it, famous show notes. This looks like the Whomping Willow. Ooh. This is getting more mysterious by the second. No, I haven't used film in the show notes, have I? And the simple reason for that is that I try to record this episode as close to as close as I can to it actually going out. It's not always that way, and I've got some plans which we'll talk about at the end of the show today, tease, which means it might not always be so necessary, but generally, yes, I like to record them fairly close to it going out. And so the X Pro 1 with my vintage lens, thank you Tim Binder, there's your mention, and the X100V, really they end up being the pictures that I use, because they can be so much more current. This is marvellous. You know me, I get sidetracked a bit too easily, but I love it when you get just a shaft of light coming through the trees. It's quite thick tree cover here. Just one shaft makes its way through, and it lights up part of the floor of the woods. So let me see if I can get it. So to get this kind of shot, you need to... Well, I'm going to go to f5.6. And I'm going to underexpose by at least 2 stops. And let's see if we can create that. What am I on? 160 ISO f5, shutter speed 400th, underexposed by 3 stops. I'm not sure whether the shaft of light, which is what I'm trying to get, is showing that well. I might find a better example yet. Right, where were we? Yes, but the language, Well, I do. Yeah. It's not because I'm old, as my kids would say. Not at all. I mean, I quite like retro. Retro's quite in anyway at the moment, isn't it? When I still like to call a record, even though it might be coming off an MP3 I still call the sat-nav, I still call it the map. Should we put the coordinates in the map? So, yeah, I don't know. But that's my reasons for not sharing the film work. So I'll dev some up, and I'll pop some on the show page. Not necessarily this week, but another week to come. But don't be too hasty to judge. Particularly our friend Jim Solos, who makes incredible film work, and my friend Giles, because they know they shot film for years and years and years and years, and they know what to do with it. And I'm still very much getting used to it again. I'm going further into this woods. So there we go, Miles and Carolyn. There's your reasons. I think you'll like this. A letter. See, I'm calling it a letter from Steve Pears with some pictures attached. So it's a digital letter. Of course it is. Hello, Neil. Thanks for the podcast. I've been enjoying it since I was lured in by an interview with Sean Tucker in episode 5. You are my regular gardening companion. My Friday photo walk listening is usually a bit of hard labour in the garden. But you know what? This is supposed to be a relaxing podcast. That's the whole point of a photo walk. That we go walking with our cameras. I know not everybody does that, but I don't like to think of you as doing hard labour in the garden, Steve. I want you to get the deck chair out at least. It's not a walk, I know, but take it easy. Take a weight off. Grab yourself a cold one and listen along. I am now truly lost. Neil, stop walking forward then. You're just aimlessly, well, I could be going in circles. Did I come from there? If this was late at night, Blair Witch would start to play havoc on my memory. Anyway, Steve says, although I'm happy to be called a photographer, I'm less at home with the concept of being a creative. I spent my working life being very practical as an engineer. Well, that's creation in itself, really, isn't it? Being an engineer, any field of professionalism has an air of creativity to it. Look at accountants. Nudge, nudge. But now there's a better example. I found the better example of light just pouring through a gap in the trees and it's hitting the bottom of a stump. This is a much better example. I might put the other one in anyway so you can see what I was trying to achieve with the other one. So ISO 160, f5, shutter speed 1/60th, and I think that is much, much better. So yeah, being a creative, is that a problem, Steve? It sounds like it is. Processing using challenging software tools, he says, is still a work in progress. I use Affinity Photo, which is comprehensive and capable. Not quite where I am yet. Well, I looked up Affinity Photo because I must admit, it's one... Have they sent the planes out looking for me? I'm down here. Look for the sign that says help. I looked it up because it's not one where... I'm not particularly familiar with it at all. I must have heard of it, surely, because when I look them up, they say Affinity Photo has become the first choice for photography and creative professionals around the world who love its speed, power and precision. Born to work hand in hand with the latest powerful computer technology, it's the only fully loaded photo editor integrated across Mac OS, Windows and iOS. I've got to say, it's a new one on me. It's not the biggest, is it? Is it the first choice? I don't know. I mean, it has a standalone price, doesn't it, I think, from what I saw. I don't think it's on a monthly. And I know there are plenty of people that feel a bit uncomfortable with I've got 2 planes out now looking for me. Look, help! The sign is down here. Yes, I know some people feel very uncomfortable with the subscription base of Adobe, but I've always seen that as fuel in the car, really. I mean, There are certain subscriptions. I mean, we have one ourselves, don't we? Really, Patreon. There are certain subscription services that I gladly give to, and Adobe is one of those. It's not so much a donation though; it's a professional fee. That one. I suppose this can be professional. Can you? Yes. Can you offset it? Yeah, I'm getting photo advice, Neil. Yeah, I suppose that's tax deductible. Let me walk this way. But Adobe I always see as the fuel in the car. But getting back to Affinity, it's not one I'm particularly knowledgeable about, or I've never used it, that's for sure. So I'll put a link in the show notes if I remember, so you can go look it up for yourself. Steve said, I've had the opportunity to join the Earl Shilton Camera Club. The Earl Shilton Camera Club? Is that actually run by a real life hot-blooded Earl? Don't know. Or is it a place, Earl Shilton? I've learned so much from the generous and talented members. Being part of a group is a much easier way of learning than doing it on your own. Strangely, we've had a very successful time during COVID, with regular Zoom sessions for competitions and guest speakers, some of whom would never have travelled to present to us, so we've widened our experiences. That's a really good point. I've attached a few photographs from some of my recent walks. A couple resonate with recent episodes. See the McLaren parked outside St Pancras Station, which I immediately thought of when listening to episode 249 with Tim Wallace. This was taken on a recent walk from Hatton Gardens, where they had, of course, the famous jewel heist, didn't they? A good few years back, to Euston. Then there's episode 250 and the Avebury Stones. Here are my stone images from Pembrokeshire, which is definitely good for photo walks. Ancient burial sites, magnificent coastline. Here we go. Look, he said the word. I read this email earlier, so that must have been on my mind while I was talking about enchanted woodlands, because he said here, enchanting woodlands. Oh, I feel a bit spooked now. Love those images. They will be on the show page. And when you see the stones, so if you'd have looked a couple of weeks ago, you'd have seen the pictures of my stones. Not mine, the ones that were laid 4,000 to 5,000 years ago at Avebury. I had no idea, by the way. I heard the other day that it took 1,500 years to actually make Stonehenge. There was me thinking it all arrived by DPD, and they kind of put them together. Come on, boys. Van's over at about 3:15. Get busy, put that one up. We've got another one arriving. But 1,500 years, that's a long tail project, isn't it? But those stones that are in your pictures, and you have to see the show page today. Fantastic photos, by the way. Beautiful contrast, lovely. I'll put the stones ahead of the McLaren one, mainly because I don't know, I've got something about black and whites and stones. They were gorgeous photographs, but I put the other ones in there as well. How on earth they got those stones? I mean, it's the same as the Stonehenge conversation, isn't it? How on earth they did that? God knows, but mostly, Neil, I write to say thank you for the quality and variety that you consistently produce. The interesting guests that you interview with charm and knowledge. Charm and knowledge, me? Can you tell my wife that? And the tenacity that's required to keep on, even though it must be lonely at some times. Regards, Steve. Keep listening, Steve. It's almost like you wrote that mail from what I'm about to announce. Some very important information coming up. But I tell you what, let's play a segment from. We like to play our. I'm going to try and get out this bit of woods while you listen to this. A little bit of inspiration from a former guest, way back when. This is Sean Tucker from episode 5.
When I started in photography, I went to YouTube like everybody else does to learn skills and teach yourself, which is great. You can do that today. It's amazing. And I was often really disheartened by watching YouTubers who, most of their video ended up being a marketing tactic of look how great I am, look how much success I have and all the clients that want to work with me, and then a month later you'd see they disappeared because they went bankrupt. I'm like, oh, you were lying. You were just saying stuff because the whole point of you making videos was to show off about how great you are. And how discouraging that was to me, trying to teach myself, going, well, if this guy's doing this and he's got so many clients, what's wrong with me? Why can't I make this work? And I made a choice that I would never make videos like that I would be as honest about where it's not working and failing, and how little work I actually get in as a photographer, and how it's a constant struggle. Even if I have a YouTube channel that's working, it's still a struggle and still difficult to make things work. And the one guy who stands out, I think, was Zach Arias, who the tone of his videos felt a bit different to me, and he was someone I latched onto earlier. And there was a video he did for Scott Kelby's channel, I think, called Transform, and it was very, very honest about how it wasn't working for him. And I thought that video made an impression on me, and I always wanted to be at least that honest and say where it wasn't working, because I think if I'm genuinely not just trying to show off about the fact that I think I'm a good photographer and I'm trying to help people, because I think that's what a lot of people do on YouTube, is they've got this veil of I want to educate people, but it's mostly about promoting themselves, and I didn't want to fall into that trap. So I'm very deliberate about being honest about where things are difficult, or where my work didn't meet my own standards or other people's standards, or where money was tight, or because then it encourages people to know that the difficulties in their journey are everyone's. There's safety in numbers. We can just keep going together, and then I think I am more likely to help.
And I did say that by the time you'd listened to that clip, I should be out of the woods. But I'm no closer to finding where I was, unless... Hold on, I didn't plan this. Sounds like I did, but I didn't. This tree looks familiar. Cackle, cackle in the background. And here we are. It's the Whomping Willow. Hello, Whomping Willow. I'm not a willow. I know you're not, but you look like one. Sean Tucker from the very, very early days. So we can't go very far from mentioning the subject of Instagram at the moment, can we? But before those that don't go anywhere near the platform, head for the off switch, as I say every time we go to talk about Instagram. Although that Instagram episode that we had is one of the most popular that we've had so far. Really, it is. Above some of the big downloads that we've had for really well thought of guests that we've had in the past. So it was obviously something that struck a nerve. But before you don't go near the off switch, because we have a little bit of IG stuff, but I'll be spreading it across the coming months. But it's certainly something that pours thoughts into the mailbag. It's quite divisive too, looking at some of the messages. Mike Miller from the show page for episode 248, he reached out where we started our conversation about Instagram proper. He says, so with regard to the Instagram discussion, Neil, I think an open discussion amongst the photographic community is in order. I agree. What are the things that people like about posting their photographs to Instagram? Oh, we found it. Mike, we're out. You don't have to come and rescue me. I've actually found my way out. At least I think I have. That looks like a path. Hold on. Here it is. Duck through the holly. And, there's the path. Good. I was beginning to think any moment might come across a cottage that looks a bit ominous or something. Anyway, what did he say? Oh, yes. What are the things that people like about posting their photos to Instagram? What don't people like about Instagram? What would they not change? I suppose what would they change as well? I personally don't like the terms and conditions and what Instagram can do with your photos once they've been posted. The hunt for likes and the addictive response that this creates, etc., etc. What is the ultimate wish list that photographers have for a new social media platform? Very good questions, Mike. And does that open it up to you? This show is all about the mailbag and it's all about you. So, write in. What is it that you like, don't like, and all those other questions in between that Mike posed a moment ago. Actually, Dennis Skyam was mentioned in that episode, and he had some thoughts on how it could be done better. Dennis wrote, Instagram needs to have a clear mission and a clear vision. It doesn't work as well now, in part because it's trying to be the old Instagram, Facebook Lite, Snapchat, YouTube, TikTok, all at once, while simultaneously trying to cater more to businesses through advertising. And to his words now, that awful web shop implementation. It's a recipe, he says, for chaos. And while a little mess doesn't hurt, this is nuclear level chaos. Any new platform must be clear in that its purpose is to service a segment, or creative segment rather, and their potential audience. Not to sell diet pills, he says, to children or makeup to insecure teens. Ooh, say it like you mean it, Dennis. Don't hold back there. I tell you what, Eric DeLorme as well, another one of our real friends of the show, he wrote some strong thoughts himself about the platform. The real problem, he says, with Photo Social today is that if you want to share your photos with non-photographers, I like the way he describes non-photographers in brackets, normals, Flickr, 500px, hello, etc., they'll get you almost zero views because this is where photographers hang out, which is true. Which is why a lot of photographers like to post to things like 500px, because then you know that you've got photographers talking about photography. But actually, as Eric quite rightly points out, sometimes you like to get to the so-called normals. Now, I've got another twist in the tale here. A right turning I wasn't expecting. Tell you what, you're going to have to come on these photo walks with me, physically, just so you can keep me in check, really. Neil, we're not going down there. That's too dark, you've got no idea where it's going, and it's not officially a footpath. And it leads to that cottage you were talking about, with the smoke coming out the chimney, with a black cat just sitting sunning itself just outside the back door. So, yeah, Eric Delorme, he says the normals are on Facebook, Instagram, and to a lesser degree, Twitter. There seems to be a burgeoning photographer community on Twitter these days. Take a look at what @FlackPhoto is building, what Michael Beecham and the others are doing. They are linked to these, so you can see what Eric's talking about. But Twitter has its own issues. Ads and toxicity. Here we go, toxicity. Hang on, let's get through these horrible stingers. Ooh. Every week, the stingers get bigger. Unless web hosting somehow magically becomes free, any photo sharing and or social platform will necessarily get inundated with ads and other schemes cooked up by enterprising MBAs to monetize a site. Yeah, good points again. And you'll see Eric's write-up to this piece that we did in the Facebook group. And I've sent a DM, by the way, to FlackPhoto, otherwise known as Andy Adams. And go look at Andy's. I mean, Andy obviously has a real, just genuine passion for photography and, moreover, photographers. And I learned so much through just 1 hour on Andy's Twitter feed. Message from Chris, not Neil. I'm wondering whether people are confusing not getting enough likes with it being a good, bad or ugly platform, or you're going to cause trouble here. It seems to me, says Chris, that if some photographers were entirely honest with themselves, that likes have become their driving force, and anything that changes that is unwelcome. Is that possible? Don your tin helmet, as you would say, Neil. Yes, another one of my phrases. I should probably have to do that after your mail. You're going to get us in trouble this week. But good points, and that's our Insta discussion for this week. Well, maybe we'll do something in a couple of weeks' time more on Insta. But do send your thoughts in. My word, look at that. That was the largest dragonfly I've ever seen. It was as large as a glider. It was, I'm telling you, this big it was. In the meantime, shall we play something from Johnny Keeley? I know that we've featured Johnny a bit of late because he was one of the two main voices in that particular episode, number 251. Instagram is not for photographers. That's what Johnny said. But did he mean it?
The sentiment in that video was really just about sharing yourself, expressing yourself through whatever means you want to. But if you want to optimize it through whatever means Instagram prefer to share. So I don't think that Instagram are, I think people have misunderstood his message that may be his fault. But I genuinely think that Instagram are just saying that if you were to define Instagram, it is no longer going to be defined as a photo app. It is going to be defined as a social media. Just, for example, you take Twitter, you could still just about define it as a text-based social media, even though it's full of images. It still really is about that character count. Take TikTok, you could define it as a video. It's not photos. And Instagram has been a photo app this whole time, and it has had video for a very long time. So I think really all he's saying, I may be wrong, all he's saying is that now this is going to be a more ambiguous platform, which is just about sharing, what it is that you do through whatever means you want to.
There's a lot of new wildlife, it seems, in the country this year. I keep hearing about things that are popping up that actually should belong in other countries. Oh, by the way, that was Johnny Keeley, and we'll take an Insta break for a couple of weeks. Not quite sure I can get through this path. Oh, here we go, this way. We're off again. Insects and animals and things that generally belong in other countries. We've got one called the false widow at the moment. It's a spider. I found one yesterday. And honestly, no word of a lie. You're going to think I'm making this up. Neil, you're being dramatic again. No word of a lie. I went to turn the security light on the house, and I went to press that, and I just, for some reason, I just saw out the corner of my eye, it's not completely dark, there was a spider on the switch itself. And it was one of these false widows. Now, just because you hear the word false, don't be thinking that this thing can't hurt you. Apparently, they've been giving nasty bites. And a friend of mine actually almost ended up in hospital. Not as a life-threatening thing, you understand, but because his hand, really, it swelled up. The size of a small Star Wars Death Star. And so I looked at it, and our Jack, our eldest, has just got a new phone. It's got that, what's the make? What's the one he's got? Is it Samsung or is it Sony? I don't know. I didn't do the renewal on it. But he's got this amazing camera, amazing macro. And I went inside to get him. And by the time we came out, sadly, it had gone. And I said, we missed it. And Sam said to me, did you kill it? I said, no, of course I didn't kill it. And apparently that's what we're supposed to do. I've never heard that order myself. What do you think? Do people... They don't even say that in... You don't say that in Australia, do you? I mean, you have 9 of the 10 most venomous snakes and spiders that hang out in a very antisocial way underneath your loo seats. But you don't have an order to exterminate, do you? I didn't think you did anyway. But, right, where were we? Yes, Insta break. No more Insta for a couple of weeks, except, briefly this, from Catherine Cunningham, who I meant to mention a moment ago. Hello, Neil. I'm firmly convinced that my conversations, searches, podcast listening, my actions as well as thoughts evokes targeted marketing. I'm just having to dip underneath the trees. I see opening. Hang on, Catherine. I'm being sidetracked for a second, but for very good reason. I need to get this picture. I've been walking through this quite dense woodland, and now I've got the opening of this field ahead of me. But I can't. Am I going to be able to... I can't get my exposure low enough. Come on. That's the problem. On auto ISO, see, this is where you don't want auto ISO, because sometimes I use evaluative metering a lot, and that serves me well for most of what I do when it comes to photographing people. But if you're in a woodland or fairly dense forestry or anywhere where you're looking out into the open where it's really sunny, then evaluative metering and auto ISO, they are not your friends. So I'm going to move that to ISO 400. I've set at 125th. Let's open the aperture a little bit, 5.6, and there we go. So now I've got this sort of light at the end of the tunnel effect, and it's actually worked, because on all my automatic settings there's no way I could handle the exposure that I wanted to take. I mean, underexposed by 3 stops was nowhere near enough. So, right, where were we? Catherine, sorry, Catherine. That was quite a good photo moment. And you know me, this is a photo podcast. It's all about stopping for a picture every once in a while, isn't it? So, Catherine Cunningham. Hello, Neil. I'm firmly convinced that my conversations, my searches, my podcast listening, my actions, as well as thoughts, evokes targeted marketing towards me in social media and email. And frankly, actually, I don't really care, she says. I just ignore the hints and the pushes, accepting those ads as the sort of fee of my using their platforms. Now, there is a different approach altogether. So that's why I meant to mention it a moment ago. But thank you, Catherine. We got there in the end, didn't we? One from Andy Tybalt. Hey, Neil, went on my photo walk today, my usual place, Rocky Point Park, Warwick, Rhode Island, listening to the podcast, of course. There was one point I heard an airplane, and was going crazy looking out for it. It was over your head and not mine all the time. See, that's the beauty of this show. That's why I know sometimes I get unnecessarily angry about the aircraft, because they are sometimes, oh, please, not another drone. But yeah, and I mean the drone of a Pratt & Whitney, not necessarily the drone of one of those drones overhead. Yesterday, actually, there was a gunship over our house yesterday, one of those Apache helicopters. Wow, look at those. Those things look really mean, don't they? I heard it coming, but it was quite clever, because they fly really low, and you think, where's the sound? Is it behind me? Is it front? Is it left? Is it right? They kind of throw their voice, if you will. But thank you for the pictures, and I'll put those on the show page today. Here's one from, now I hope I get this name right, and I feel moderately unprofessional not to have, because you sent me something, and you've written to me, and we've had conversations over email, and not once have I said, can I make sure how I pronounce your name? But I'm pretty sure it's Kara. But you're going to say it's Kara, aren't you? Anyway. Kara Gader, is that right? Oh, I hope so. If it's not, I shall of course retract and make immediate apologies and send you a free packet of Garibaldis. Hello, Neil. Thanks for the inspiring podcast, not least the Friday Photo Walk, which I enjoy, not only because of the photography content, but also because you take me on trips around the home counties. Yeah, that's what we call them around here, the home counties. I lived in London for 8 years, and after 18 months of COVID travel restrictions, I really, really miss England. Oh, I really, really miss travelling, so I know what you mean. My wife and I and some friends have planned a trip to the Peaks in mid-September. Tickets to Manchester bought and rooms in Edale booked. Oh, fantastic. Now that is a photo walk. Tell me, please, when you're coming back, or when you come at all. But now it looks like we have to cancel unless a miracle happens and wipes COVID off the face of the earth. Oh, wouldn't that be great? Yes. Seconding that one. In the meantime, my photographic journeys are restricted, but as the brilliant work of several of your recent guests show, limitations often trigger creativity. I currently have an exhibition and a recently published photo book out. A landscape photography project shot within a radius of less than 800 meters. But your book arrived and I opened it up. I thought, what's this? I wasn't expecting a book today. And I was I was overjoyed. It's a fantastic book. We'll talk more about it in a moment. It says the project's called Henry's Hain, which is Henry's Hain, which is Henry's, as in Henry's something, Hain, Hegn, which I probably would have said Heggen, wouldn't I? But you pronounce it Hain, which means Henry's Fences in Danish. The full title of the book is Henry's Hain, here we go, Et Danks Landskab, or Landscape, or Landscape. We have a lot of Danish listeners who are right now all ordering their Garibaldis free of charge off me because I'm making a proper pig's ear at the pronunciation. It translates as Henry's Fences anyway, a Danish island landscape. It's a micro-landscape photography project focusing on the farmland and coastlines of the southern tip of an island. I'm just going to say an island, one of Denmark's numerous small islands. The Henry behind the fence is a local farmer called Henry Larsen. The landscape around his farm is stitched together by characteristically looking fence posts made of driftwood and spruces rafters, branches from the garden, and even the odd water pipe. I love that. His frugal and carefully maintained fences crisscross the fields and meadows and create a unique cultural landscape. By zooming in on this tiny spot of land in the sea, or next to the sea, I hope the project tells a wider story about the man and nature. And I tell you what, it does exactly that. It's fantastic. It really is. And when you say that it's a micro project, because I know you shot it within that 800 meter limit, or self-imposed limit by the project, I suppose, and the fences, it certainly doesn't look it. It looks like it's like a whole corner of your country, because you get everything there. I mean, there are some different seasons by the looks of it. I love those wonderful moody pictures of the mist with those vanishing points, with the fences on each side moving up toward the woodland. That's one of my absolute favourites in the book. And it's just fantastic. And of course, sometimes you get close-up detail, like the wires, the barbed wires, the texture of the posts. Inspired, I would say inspired and beautiful in equal measure, really. There's a selection of photographs that Cara sent in. I'm going to get in so much trouble. Normally I have a go at Kevin Mullins for this, don't I, on the Fujicast. And that's because I diligently go off and find the names and then make him sound like he doesn't know what he's talking about. But on this occasion, I've done it to myself. I'll put a selection of those photos on the show page. But thank you for the book, sincerely. And let's say when. Let's not say if. When you come over to this country and do some of those walks. And I do hope that you'll take one of those walks, not only in the peaks, but if you can dot south as well. And we'll go and find some places in the home counties. That would be marvellous. I look forward to seeing you. Let's play some words and inspiration from another Danish photographer who I enjoyed talking to of late, Henrik Saxgren, who made that incredible photo. Well, I'm going to call it a photo pilgrimage to spend time here. I mean, he made it, 6 or 7 trips he made to spend time with those living in Greenland, to photograph with them as they, well, just lived their life and hunted in temperatures likely to give you frostbite if you tried to load a camera with film on a typically chilly day, which I suppose to those that were hunting was just par for the course. But for Henrik, it was a tough photo assignment, and it was a joy to talk to him as well. And he has a fantastic book out as well, of course, which I'll link to.
In the beginning, I only photographed with my 6x12 Lindhof.
Yeah.
And it was analog, and I had to load it with films, and it was very, very painful to do in minus 35 degrees, but I had to do it. The year after, in 2015, I brought a digital camera, and as long as I could keep the batteries warm, it was very good. It was very easy to use, and after that, I only used my analog camera for true landscapes, where I had the time to go into the tent or something to change my film. In 2015, I was negotiating with Smithsonian, the museum in Washington, and they were quite interested in exhibiting my work, but the Schule department said no because they were too bloody.
Too much blood.
I had the same experience in Paris. There was a museum's director who would like to show the work, but he was afraid that animal activists would come and destroy his museum. And I was disillusioned because of that, you can understand. I really wanted to exhibit my work abroad. And my good friend, Sebastião Salgado, when I'm in Paris, I always live in his house because we are very close friends. And we talked about that. And he said, Henrik, you have to take one more year where you go up there and show it's exactly as hard for people to live there as it is for animals. And that was the reason I started to ask for people who have lost parts of the body to frostbites and things like that, to show that it was as hard to be a human as to be an animal.
Henrik Saxgren there. Fantastic. And I'll link to, of course, all the episodes that we mentioned in today's show. I've come to the top of the hill. Oh, this is marvellous. I've got a couple of pictures that show this view, which I'll pop on the show page today, but it might be a bit windy because I'm at the top. And I say this every week, don't I? I hope you can hear me and it's not doing I'm sure it won't be. So, show news coming up soon. I'm going to lean a little on my studio self for the next segment, though. We've been doing this feature called The First Thing That You See. You know that because you've been taking part in it, and thank you very much for the photographs that you've been sending in. Essentially, it was at some point, sometimes about a third, two-thirds, sometimes halfway through the show, I would stop you and say, right, with whatever you can use to make an image, whether it's a fancy camera, DSLR, mirrorless, or an action cam, or whatever you had, pinhole camera, I think I suggested at one stage. The devil you were going to do that quickly and then send it in to me, I don't know, but you never know. And then, I would count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then bang, you take a picture and send the picture in, and then we put them on the show page. And it was just as we call them, a natty little feature. Nothing designed to last, just something to do photographically. But we've done the last one. We did that last week. So there are a few people to thank, and in order that I wanted to get everybody in right up to the moment of actually editing the show, I'm passing back to Studio Self to thank everybody right now for the images that were
from Steve Bellamy with his rainy windscreen shot. First time mailer, I'm going to use your story and the other great pictures you sent in, Steve, very soon on a Photowalk show. Mike Miller with his gulls on a hot tin roof picture. Sounds like a movie in the making, Mike. Craig Hughes, here's the first thing that I see on my walk to work. It's a panoramic train that takes the tourists through a commune of Amber and beyond. Well, I've got to say, Craig, if that's the first thing you see each morning, that's amazing. Theodore Stanner's house behind the hedge. He mentioned trying to get Joel Mayovitz on the show. On it, so far, no luck. So anybody with 6 degrees of separation story with Joel, can you help? Marcus Elder is in the midst of a cornfield in Sweden, somewhere. And Jan Erik, or Jem, the blueberries. Yes, the season has started. We have blackberries here, Jem, which means very soon. Is it soon? Is it the season? Oh, I always get the season confused. But I know I'll have thorns stuck in every part of my arm as I reach in to purloin them. So they are the last of the first things that you see.
So there. Thank you to all those that have taken part in the First Thing That You See feature. And we have a replacement. Yes, we do. Not quite First Thing That You See, but I think something that is equally as natty and something that's going to be good for the community of Photography Daily. I hope, anyway. And that bit's coming. I've got some personal stuff to say to you, and that bit's coming up very, very soon. Let's do some more mails, though, shall we? I had a mail from a request from a photography blog releasing an article soon about photography over this odd period of history. We'll underline the odd, shall we? I don't think I should really read all the questions that they sent to me, but I thought surely it doesn't do any harm to mention one of them. And I'll give you the actual title nearer the time. They sent me five. It was 5 questions that they sent all together. But let me just share this particular one for you. And it was, what have you missed photographing? And then in brackets, insert your genre here. So it went out to photographers, lots of different genres, not just wedding photographers. It went out to, I suppose, editorial, portrait, sport. So yeah, insert your genre here. So I put wedding in my one and sent back my 5 answers. But my answer is probably not quite what they're expecting, with the question that said, what have you missed photographing? Because it wasn't so much what I've missed photographing, it was more about how I felt while I was photographing. You know me, touchy-feely, all the rest of it. How can I explain this? I was in, it's a couple of weeks ago now, I was in Salisbury, which is a beautiful city in England, and they have the famous cathedral, and then dotted around some wonderful, beautiful churches. And I was in one of those. I've been so used to, over the last year, I've done a handful of weddings as lockdown sort of came and went and came back again. And then of late, when things started opening up, they still had the rule that there was to be no singing, no choirs, nothing like that. None of that sort of... I'm not a particularly religious man. I am spiritual, whatever spiritual means, whether that's with a capital or lowercase s, I don't know. But one thing I've really, really missed that just strikes me every time I hear it. If you hear a good choir, one that's one that really works well together, and I've been lucky to have photographed in some of these beautiful churches and cathedrals across the UK where the choirs are just outstanding, particularly at Christmas time. I've got the hairs are standing up on the back of my neck right now. Well, they're certainly not standing on your head, are they, Neil? Yes, all right, thank you very much. But so I was in Salisbury in this church, and I noticed the choir was in, and I said to the vicar, is the choir singing? He said, yep, the choir is singing. I said, that's amazing. But I did not expect, and maybe look, they're a good choir, but I haven't heard a choir now for a long, long time in a church. And you get the acoustics, the resonance, the sound of a choir, just fabulous. And so the service started, and the choir had a couple of numbers. Do you call them numbers? That sounds a bit lounge, doesn't it? But I'm going to call them numbers. I want you to close your eyes, not if you're driving, clearly. So for grumpy old man in a cab, no, you can't close your eyes, in a truck rather. But if you can, close your eyes, because this is what I've missed. And it won't translate at all in that piece and the answer that I've given to that blog. But honestly, just for one moment, I just stopped making pictures, and I rushed to the microphone, and I grabbed some of the choir. It sounds a bit odd in the middle of the countryside, doesn't it? Something like from a Mel Brooks film where the camera turns to the choir in the corner of the woods or the field and they're there. And you think, oh, it's not a soundtrack at all. They actually had the choir there. But yeah, that's what I've missed. And here we go. Last mail of the week time. What do you mean, Neil? I'm looking at my counter and there seems to be a lot more of the show to come. Ah, yes, there is. But there's an announcement, and that's not really a mail. So ahead of our news, so there's still one thing to come. From episode 224, Jamie Rathberg says, and it's been a mail I've been meaning to read for a while actually, Jamie, so my apologies. Neil, just a note to say thank you for your introduction to Gulnara Samoilova, whose women's street photographer's work and site and book is just inspiring. But, sorry, I put the just in there, but I'm sure that's what you meant. It's inspiring, yes. But moreover, the work she's done to bring others to the fore is testament to many photographers who seem delighted simply to promote the work of others above their own. And Gulnara, he even took the time to write back to me and encourage me with my own street work in Edmonton, Alberta. There we go. And that's true, isn't it? I think sometimes, I really do think sometimes the higher up this is probably a really clumsy way to say it, but I'm just going to, just say it, Neil. All right. The higher up the ranks the photographer goes, and I don't mean that necessarily in skill, although Gulnara has plenty of that, but I mean just generally in, their respect levels or notoriety and so on, that if you do get through to them, they really do give of themselves. They do, and Gulnara is proof of that. So I think we should have some words from Gulnara herself. And thank you very much for your email, Jamie.
Street photography to me is not really a term, it's a feeling. Street photography is a way to unwind. So that's why I appreciate so much a different genre within street photography. Like when I had no idea, before I found women street photographers, I had no idea that there's a street abstract, like a work by Linda Hacker. She does street abstracts, and they're just fabulous. I am a huge fan of it. I personally don't do abstract, but I'm very inspired by her work just because it's different. Olga Karlovac, her photographs are blurry, dark, moody, and they're kind of like a borderline between like fine art, but I consider it street photography. And the other thing, like, I don't want to define street photography per se. I think it should be free of any definition. I don't want people to street photography only taking in the street of metropolitan city. No. If you live in a small village in the middle of India and you have a phone and you go outside of your home on a dirt road and you're taking pictures, in my opinion, it is a street photography.
Gulnara Samoilova, and I'll link, of course, to that episode as well. Right, show news. That was our last mail of the week. And usually that's the end of the show, isn't it? That's it. That will be it. But there's some show news. And I did mention at the start I'd be talking about this. And for the second time, we haven't done this for such a long time. We've done it twice within one show. Normally I like to just have all the links out on location. The links, as we call them. But today, something a bit different. I want to cross back to studio because I want to make sure I get this absolutely right. And I know that if I do it on the Photowalk, I'll get back and I'll be mixing the show and I'll think, oh no, I forgot to mention X, and that was really, really important. So I'm going to cross back to my studio alter ego, as I call him, to fill you in with some show news.
Well, when I launched this podcast, I did it for two reasons primarily. One, mentally at a time where nothing commercially photographic was happening or likely to be anytime soon, I really craved a creative outlet that was my dinghy to navigate. I could choose when to tack. And two, I had a serious podcast itch to scratch. The Fujicast reminded me that community brings a wondrous, powerful sense of belonging, a safe place to talk, beyond just putting out a show that travels in a one-way fashion. The Fujicast had found its feet and format, although I felt maybe I had a little more to say personally. Oh, and there's a third reason. You just can't take the Columbo out of me as I turn back to say, just one more thing. And that is that I bloody love the medium of sound. People talk about passion, and it's exactly that for me. I really did grow up listening to my favourite radio presenters on scratchy medium wave, under the bed sheets, with the volume as high as I could manage so as to hear the programmes but low enough not to get busted by my parents. I am genuinely passionate about sound. And this journey with Photography Daily has been exactly that, and you've been a real part of it. And hopefully we have many miles to travel together yet. Now the world is opening up slightly, and I'm obviously cautious when I say that because it's not like that in every single country. But it's time here to start earning again. Doing 3 shows a week, including Patreon, is a battle whilst I'm trying to make this the way I earn my keep. There's a crossover, a transition, as football managers say. So the following changes are going to happen. The Photowalk is staying right here on a Friday, where it's always been. There are some exciting ideas that are starting to surface too with this episode. The very real prospect of Photowalk retreats and some mentoring walks too. Now the interviews. Well, I'm thrilled to have spoken to those that I have. Highlights clearly include, and it's difficult to choose a few, but let me try. Pete Souza, President Obama's photographer. Suzanne Stein in New York, whose raw work fascinates me. And more lately, Jason P. Howe for the honesty during his 2-parter. And that entirely unexpected twist where he entered into a relationship in a battle zone with a deadly assassin, the story of Marilyn. I'm so proud of what you've helped the show to become. Without you listening, commenting, and contributing with your pictures, your thoughts, your stories, it's just me, and that's not what this project's about. But there is a serious consideration that's affecting me. I spend a lot of time talking about others' mental health, and I am negating my own, and that are those that I love around me. The echoes of this go something like, Dad, any chance you could come play FIFA 21 with me on the Xbox if you got 5 minutes, that is? Daddy, there's a steam train coming through Newbury tonight. Can we go and photograph it, or are you too busy? Is there any way I can borrow you to take the kids out just on Tuesday, maybe? Additions like, if you have, or are you busy, or just, are worryingly real. As 2 friends have now said to me, you can still do what you love, just don't do it at the expense of who you love. And so I'm amalgamating the 2 Photography Daily editions into one for the moment. It'll start every Friday as the Photowalk. I'll continue to play in the inspirational quotes too, and our guest spot will appear as a second half of the show. Having one concentrated show per week means I can plan to do some photo walks on the road. Europe, the Camino, and a particular American walk are on my radar already. And if you're a patron, well, you already know of some of the exciting things that you're going to receive as part of the patron feed. But Neil, I saw your hand going up at the back. This word daily, it troubles me. Well, yes, that troubles me a mite too. Although as my good pal Mullins said from the FujiCast, Fujifilm cameras aren't really about film now, are they? Does it matter? But I have had, I think, a eureka moment that does scratch that itch too. It's a Community 365 project. Every day, one picture exclusively from our community, a new part of the Photography Daily website. The site's always owned the title, Photography Daily, and the podcast, the retreats, the future events, both on and offline. They're all part of the website, really. We receive on average 50 to 60 pictures a week by email, sometimes way more, mostly for the photo walk, some for personal feedback and review, and others, just because. So, from today, if you'd like to appear in our Community 365, I would love to see your pictures. Send to the regular address, studio@photographydaily.show. There are no rules. Common decency clearly applies, however. You don't need to provide layers of text either, though it'd be handy, if it's relevant of course, to let me know where it was made with a link to any of your web or social channels. A link back to you from another site does no harm after all. Uncle Google, via Mullins, told me that once in a seminar. When we have enough 365s, which I hope will only really take a week or so, just so that we can be ahead of ourselves, we'll launch that feature proper. And that also takes over from our First Thing That You See feature. Right, there we go. That's the show news. One more thing to say. I think my family have earned a holiday. And me, too, with them. So I'll be taking one next week, and we'll return with the new format on Friday the 20th of August. I am sure there must be some episodes from the catalogue to catch up with in the meantime, if you do need a little fix from Photography Daily's wondrous cast list of photographers. So we're tweaking and creating a show that's truly unlike any other. The calm and community of our photo walks. and the inspiration and insightfulness of our guests, all in one place on a Friday.
So, there we go, the show news. A slightly different, well, a very different end to the show this week. Not the regular sign-off, clearly. But what do you think, Carl? Sound good?
Sounds good to me. You going to tell them my news as well?
You've got news. What, are we selling you?
No.
Oh, what was your news?
I was a wedding car.
Oh, yes. Yes, you were. You were a wedding car, weren't you, Carl? Well, remember the choir earlier? Let me fill this detail in for you. Same wedding. After we'd done a little walk around the city to do a few portraits, it occurred to me that we'd sent all the guests at the church, we'd sent them back to the venue, a couple of miles down the road. So, we're in the city, my car's in the middle as well. I was parked up near to the church. And I said, how are you getting back? They looked at me and shrugged their shoulders, said, I guess we'll try and jump a cab. On a Saturday afternoon in Salisbury, I thought, you've got to be joking. So I said, why don't you jump aboard my car? Hey, they shrugged their shoulders, said, yep. And so Carl, you became the wedding car, didn't you?
Yep, next time I want ribbon and I want you to give me a proper wash inside and out beforehand.
Yeah, very good point. So yeah, I'll talk to you in 2 Fridays' time. But don't be thinking you're off the hook with sending in your thoughts about photography and what you've heard on the show and projects that you've planned and all that kind of stuff. Keep sending them in, please, because it's important more than ever now. Send them to studio@photographydaily.show. Oh, and we do have, I knew there would be something I forgot. We do have some specials, yes. Some specials coming up which will still be Wednesdays. But instead of the sign-off jingle that we usually have now, I want you to close your eyes, unless you're driving, grumpy old man behind the wheel of a truck, yes. And I want you to listen to a bit more of this. Come on, Carl. Let's get back. There's some packing to do.
Tell me we're not going on a long drive. It's my holiday too, you know.
Oh, don't worry.
I'm not. Well, only if you park me under the seagulls again.
Don't start that. You know they're not called seagulls. There's no such thing as a seagull.
I know, there's no such thing as a seagull. You tell me that every time.
Yes, you can only have black-headed gulls, herring gulls, and that's about it, actually. I've run out of gulls, Carl.
See? Seagulls. That's what they are. Umbrella term. Seagulls.